If you, like me, live in Sydney right now, on this very day, recording this very narration, at the beginning of spring, it is 35 degrees Celsius. Look, I have no idea what that converts to in Fahrenheit. Actually, let me just do a quick Google search. Okay, so it tells me it's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit for anyone living in those areas of the globe. That number is meaningless to me, but rest assured it's a furnace out there. But what are people likely to do in warmer temperatures? They're going out. They're socialising, going to gigs, to festivals, some kind of event that requires you to leave your house and go to a second or maybe a third location. For a lot of people with disabilities, that takes meticulous planning. What kind of planning? We're going to talk about it.
So my name is Laura and I'm a Senior Support Coordinator for Spinal Cord Injuries Australia.
Hi, I'm Jade and I'm a representative advocate with Spinal Cord Injuries Australia.
We're also discussing companion cards. What is it? Do you qualify? Does it really help? Find out more in this episode.
In short, the companion card scheme is a scheme that people with a disability can apply to be eligible for an additional ticket to events, venues, activities where they need an additional support person, and it's not reasonable for them to pay that out-of-pocket costs. There's specific criteria to the companion card where people need lifelong, quite specific needs. So I guess it's not so much as, I'm having a support worker needs me to take me. You need to demonstrate what support you need at events. So it might be mobilising up and down stairs. It might be, needing someone there to help with any personal care. So in the application process, you've really got to drill down, and it's quite a process to apply for. It's got to be backed up by doctors, allied health, and you may not necessarily get approved straight away.
I am legally blind. I was born completely blind in my right eye and significantly short-sighted in my left eye. And I use a companion card in special circumstances for me. So for things like concerts, my cane or my guide dog don't actually meet my mobility requirements in those busy, loud situations. So I require a sighted guide at those events. I don't take the dog because I'd hate to think that she could get stepped on or something at a show. So I'll take a sighted guide with me, and they assist me with my mobility, orientating me to the venue, and just in general making sure that I'm in a safe situation.
So I've got cerebral palsy that mainly affects my mobility, walking, balance and fatigue. So I can't walk for long distances. I can't walk up stairs without a handrail. Also in crowds where there's a lot of people, I can get a little bit anxious and have to be a bit more mindful of my bearings. So that's where I need a support person. So I primarily use the card at places like concerts, theatre shows, where I know that it's going to be a big venue, and I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like. So I need to ensure that the seat's accessible with not too many stairs to get up to, and potentially it might be on an aisle without too many people. It also acts as a bit of an independence because I'm 27. I'm sort of I love to spend time with my family, but there's events that I'm interested in that they're not interested in. So it gives me the opportunity to go to different shows and places that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to. And as well, I know that I could go, with a friend, or my sister might speak up and take me, but I don't want to feel obliged to that person to have to be a support person. I just want to be out socially like anyone else. So it so the companion card, makes it more equitable to access things, because I don't feel like we should, as people with a disability, have to pay for an additional ticket, which could be a few $100s when we're already paying a lot from our NDIS plans to go to events.
Obviously, you two are able to qualify for a companion card, but the qualification process is not uniform for everybody.
Well, when I first applied for the companion card, when I was first accepted onto the NDIS, I was knocked back initially. So I went to the GP and I filled out all the criteria around mobility, self-care, social behaviour, all the different criteria that the companion card goes into. And I set that off, because I could see that it was, I guess, a bit of common sense that I had a permanent disability and would need quite obvious support. But I guess the people on the other end don't necessarily see that. And I got feedback from that initial application that the companion card isn't to be used as facilitating social support, so to speak. So I had to reapply and really talk about those instances where I've been at risk at events without a support person there. I know there was an incident before I got the companion card. I went to see a local football game, and I was going into the venue. This was at Wynn Stadium, so my mum was working, and it was like a set of 3 games, an all afternoon thing. So I said to her, okay, I'm going to catch the bus in and see the earlier games, and then I'll meet you in after you get back from work. So I went into the venue, had my tickets there, but then when I got there, I realised that the seats that my mum and I had booked, they didn't have any handrails for me to get up on the stairs, so I physically couldn't get up to my seat, and I asked the security guard to help me, and they wouldn't help me. They said they weren't allowed. So they basically told me, okay, sit down here. And I was fortunate that, it was just sort of a pre-season game. It wasn't a full stadium, so I could sit down on the flat before my mum arrived to help me. But it caused me a lot of anxiety thinking, what happens if I was just going somewhere on my own, or what happens if the stadium was full and someone came later on to get their seats. So the companion card provides a lot of reassurance that when I'm using it, they're going to book somewhere that's accessible. But I guess as my work as a support coordinator as well, it can cause my participants a lot of anxiety if they get rejected, because they feel that, they've got to tell their stories over and over, especially if they've got a new injury. And I think, people, on the other end, are treating it, more of a tick the box type scheme, and they're not thinking of like a person-centered approach.
I got on the companion card scheme when I was 18, and my mum actually did all the paperwork. So I guess she was kind of all over it and had everything already. It's been amazing. It does take away from the anxiety that I feel about going to shows. I go to a lot of music festivals, and I love my live music. So the thought of potentially not being able to afford to buy two tickets, or the thought of, a friend or a family member that wants to go but can't afford to go because, even though they want to support me so that I can go, they can't afford to go. And it's this whole big thing. The companion card actually makes it easier for me to actually find somebody to support me at that event as well. Because honestly, like, as much as I adore my main support worker, I also don't want to be out and about all the time with a support worker either. Like, I want to go out, like Laura, I want to go out with my friends, and I want to enjoy things with my friends that we're all interested in. So that's really important to me. And I do know somebody who is totally blind, who is really struggling to get a companion card at the moment. And he's basically in the same boat as I am. And for some reason, they won't give him a companion card. And it kind of shocks me. It almost seems like it's whoever you get on the day, looking at your application and dependent on what mood they're in, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it just seems, it's definitely not uniform, but it also doesn't seem like it's super, like, rigid, because two people with the exact same needs, one could get on and one couldn't if they got the same person on a different day, or two different people. Or yeah, it just kind of boggles my mind a little bit.
It's inconsistent.
That's the word I was looking for.
We all agree that companion cards are amazing, and they have obviously demonstrated that it has been able to change your life and being able to get out into a community. And like you say, you don't have to solely rely on your family to be there all the time. For every event, you can actually go with people who might want to actually go to the event that you want to go to, not out of obligation, but because they both, everybody wants to be at this event, right? In your opinions, what do you think needs to change about the application process of a companion card? So just thinking about the people that you either work with or know who haven't been able to be eligible for it, what do you think actually should be changing in your opinion?
So I think the application form for the companion card is very clinical, and it doesn't really tell you, what you need to write to automatically get approved. It might just say it could be a doctor or it can be your OT, but it also depends on their experience and their understanding of the companion card. So it would be good for the website to have like a easy read guide or a link to some key points that need to be addressed in the application, so it becomes more consistent. So that way, if it gets knocked back, you've got specific feedback that you can circle back on and address, so it's not as long of a process.
So let's talk about how we're using the companion cards. Where is it? Where are you able to use it? Where are you not able to use it?
I think one of the, I guess, like, where I use my companion card, I use it at the cinema. You can use it at wildlife parks. There's actually a list that you can access on the website, and each state and territory has its own list. A lot of the time it's like aquatic centres and cinemas, wildlife parks, but also stadiums, arenas, theatres also accept the companion card, but not everywhere accepts it. It's kind of like an opt-in scheme, which can make it a little bit frustrating. But it seems that all the major venues and ticketing providers do offer it. But if you're talking about going to, say, a local gig at a bar, you're probably not going to be able to use the companion card for that. Um, and a physical barrier that actually just stops me from using it is trying to organize a companion ticket when I'm trying to buy tickets online. There's very limited venues. I am aware that some smaller venues you can buy tickets using your companion card online, but for most places, you've got to complete a form, or you call the venue or the ticket vendor, and sometimes you can be waiting on the phone for an hour, 2 hours, just to buy tickets. And if you're in a situation like, say, the Taylor Swift Eras Tour debacle, um, I know those tickets were in really high demand, but accessible tickets were not readily available for those who actually needed them. And a lot of people that require those accessible seats missed out.
Yeah, so I agree with what Jade says. There's a whole list on the website of places that you can use it. Most big venues, in my experience, accept it. When I've been working with participants, they've given feedback to say the smaller venues, charities, may not accept it, or they'll have a 50% subsidy, which is better than nothing, but, it still has that additional burden. And I guess you can't, just go online like the general population and purchase 2 tickets. As Jade said, you'd have to ring up exactly when the tickets go on sale, and be on hold for an hour or 2 and do it over the phone, which can be really hard, because generally these tickets go on sale, in our business hours, or it might go on sale when someone's doing their personal care routine or their physio, so it's not ideal for them to put their whole life on hold for these tickets. Another, I guess, barrier to these tickets is, once you get the tickets and you're able to stay on the phone and put your order through, that's all fine and good. But a lot of venues won't send you the tickets via email or the post. So you either have to go and pick up the box office tickets on the night, or you have to go and pick them up during business hours. So I guess in my experience, I'm fortunate where I haven't been able to pick it up in business hours. I've had a family member or a friend be able to pick them up on my behalf, but that's sort of an additional burden that I'm putting on them when I want to be independent. And then also as well, if you're leaving it to the night, there's a lot of potential things that can go wrong, and we're already trying to find a park, trying to figure out where the accessible entries and bathrooms are. So it'd be much easier to be able to have them in our hands ready to go. And then also, when we have to pick it up at the box office, you've got to allow for a lot of additional time with your support worker, which can be difficult when your NDIS budget, is quite tight. So often you've sort of got to figure out, pick and choose the event you're going to, or think to yourself, hey, I'd really like to go out for dinner before the show or get picked up a bit later, but I know I've got to get my tickets and make sure I've got them so they're able to let me into the venue.
Yeah, I guess an example of that for me was I went to a show where I did stay on the line, and I was fortunate enough to get tickets. And I did have to go down to the box office during business hours, and luckily Fridays are my day off, so I was actually able to go down and do that. Um, but there's a heap, like, you have to have your companion card with you when you go and pick them up as well. They have to see the evidence of the companion card. I was also really fortunate in that circumstance because my situation had changed and my guide dog actually had to come along to that particular concert. So I did have two seats where I didn't have to get up many stairs, but there was no room for the dog. So they were actually able to move me around and get me somewhere that was better suited for my new situation. And we were also able to access the accessible parking area. So that's where it worked in my favor. But if I were to ever, say buy tickets for a show on, say, a Monday to Thursday, I wouldn't really be able to go and pick up the tickets. So yeah, it's not great. There's a lot that needs to be taken into account when you are looking at attending an event, and oftentimes because of how difficult it is to actually wait on the phone to get a companion ticket, or worried that the ticket vendor or venue isn't going to send you the ticket and you have to go to a box office. Often I'll just buy two tickets. I'll just be like, you know what, I can't be bothered doing this today. I'm just going to buy two tickets.
What I'm finding as well, you know, we've talked about how hard it is to use the companion card, and there's a lot of planning that goes into applying the companion card. So I'm not able to be spontaneous. If I see a show that comes up, say, tomorrow night, if I ring up, the accessible tickets may be taken. So I am able to use it at smaller local venues, but, if there was a concert in Sydney and I was umming and ahhing about going, I'd literally have to buy the tickets as soon as they went on sale, or I'd miss out because all the accessible seating would be already allocated.
And also, I think, to the point that you both make about support workers and having to, consider whether or not you're going to have more hours with a support worker if you do need one for a concert to then go and pick up the tickets and then doing all this other stuff. Support workers are not cheap, and neither is the cost of transportation. And it could be like $500. So you're already spending extra amounts of your funding or out-of-pocket expenses just to be able to pick these tickets up in a way that would be just easier if they either mailed it to you or just emailed it to you, yeah? So let's talk about companion cards and group bookings, because you might have more than one friend, hey? You might have more than one friend that you want to go and see something with. It's that easy?
I'm going to a concert in September, and I just didn't even bother with the companion card because there's 6 of us going. And I was like, I can't. But then also, if you've got the concern of needing the accessible seating on top of your companion card ticket, more often than not, they'll split you up from your group. They'll be like, yeah, you can have your care attendant with you, but that's it. Generally, I don't know if your experience is any different, Laura.
Yeah, so I haven't had that experience too much. a lot of the time I've been able to book, 4 tickets, at once for like a theatre show for my family to supplement, I guess, the caring responsibilities, and it hasn't been a problem. But I had an issue recently, and it was at a venue where I hadn't had any issues before, and they said to me, "Oh, you can't book for accessible tickets there." And we had to put our foot down and say, well, one daughter's got cerebral palsy, the other one's got anxiety and doesn't like crowds, and the other lady that we're taking, has had a hip replacement, and then it went through fine, but then it's sort of embarrassing to disclose that information, and you don't want to tell everyone your life story. You should just be able to use the ticket without any questions asked.
There seems to be a recurring theme that I've done with this podcast when we're coming along up against government-related stuff or something that has been either a program or a service or a scheme, where you're like constantly having to repeat your disability. And I guess to your point, Laura, it does become undignifying having to constantly repeat, even the application process, talking about personal care.
And it's also exhausting because, I shouldn't have to explain to somebody every single time why I need a care attendant with me or something like that. Like, if my guide dog's not with me, I need support. And sometimes even when my guide dog's with me, I need support. And it's kind of obvious why I need support. And it does get frustrating having to constantly repeat my story and my needs for any scheme or support that the government offers. I understand that they need evidence, but wouldn't it be great if they were all just linked and they all had access to a file on that person? They go, yeah, okay, cool.
I mean, that might be my health record. I don't really know about you, but don't we have a centralized system where all of our medical related stuff is already there, where countless letters that our doctors have written over the course of the years? I mean, why can't we just tap into that? Or the NDIS? I'm sure that they have a central,
Well, surely you should just be able to fill in a consent form.
I think, as Jade was saying, it's quite tiresome to have to explain your disability when you're accessing these events, and it always, well, not always, it sometimes makes you doubt yourself and think, am I worthy of this support? Like, am I too hard on myself? And I find it's a knock to our confidence a bit, because, like, on the outside, we're seen as like high functioning people in society. People can be well educated, they can have full-time jobs, but then have to explain in details, like you were saying, Susan, about personal care. It's sort of undignifying and anxiety provoking when, sometimes at events you've also got to worry about what other people at the venue are going to think, especially if you're going out as a group. You don't need to face that criticism from the government agencies.
I think that we are so trained by these government organisations. You're essentially, if you're born with your disability, you're essentially trained from kindergarten to know what your disability is so that you can tell your teacher what your disability is every year. And so it's almost like it's almost ingrained in us. Like, I often, when I'm meeting people for the first time, or I'm, trying to go on dates and stuff, and and people ask questions about my vision impairment and where I need support, I find myself needing to justify why I need that support. Like, oh, yes, I have a cleaner come in once a week because I just don't have the vision to see the dog hair, or the oil spills that I've made, but I still attempt to clean, like I still want them to know that I put the effort in to clean, but I need the extra support. And like it's almost, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like it's ingrained into me that I need to justify the supports that I have to everybody that I come into contact with.
Yeah, I guess just because we have support doesn't mean we're any less capable. And if we didn't have that network around us, whether it's our informal support, whether it's support from the NDIS, like support workers or allied health supports, we wouldn't be able to maintain, and this is me sounding like a support coordinator, but yeah, we wouldn't be able to maintain our capacity. Yeah. So if we didn't have those supports around us, we wouldn't be able to continue working full time, be able to live on our own, be able to pursue relationships or travel or do things. And this is another NDIS word, but have that choice and control to live an independent life. So we'd become even more of a burden or a problem to the system. And it's more so, the way I think of it is that society is more disabling rather than the disability itself.
So I'm in a very interesting situation where all three of us have childhood disabilities. It's actually not, it's a very rare occurrence to have all three of us in the same podcast with childhood disabilities. And to your point, Jade, the justification of your disability and justifying both the, trying to figure out how to toe the line between saying I am an independent person, I just need X because X is an extension of that independence, is really is a tough argument to have to keep making.
I was going to say it is, and I think it also is because I think people who are uneducated about disability have a fear of the unknown. And so when people, see me walking around the community with my guide dog, they go, oh, well, it's a guide dog. It can move around me. I almost ran into a man with a trolley this morning because he wasn't looking where he was going. And Kira kind of yanked on my arm and tried to pull me away. And I was like, that's not what she's supposed to do. Guide dogs are not supposed to be moving around, moving obstacles because they're unknowns. She's supposed to, help me get around poles and things that are a little bit more stagnant. And I just think that there is this inherent fear of the unknown about disability. And so I think, when I talk to people, they go, oh, so do you still live at home with your parents? And I'm like, no, I live by myself. And they're like, oh, well, do you work? And I'm like, yes, I work in a job that I absolutely love. And they're like, oh, I didn't expect that. I just expect people with disabilities to stay at home and live off Centrelink. And I'm like, well, now you've met someone that doesn't. And really, there aren't many people with disabilities who are just sitting at home doing nothing. They're volunteering, they're getting out and about, they're at day programs, they're at supported employment, they're at mainstream employment, they're out doing stuff. And sorry, I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but
no, it's completely fair because it's about to. And I think that it's probably a good time to flick into, let's talk about the absolute non-spontaneous, absolute minutia planning when it comes to going out for a person with a disability. So we've got our companion card. We're good to go. But Do people actually know what sort of preparation is needed for somebody with a disability, no matter what disability, when it comes to going out to events? So all three of us have very different experiences when it comes to planning. Well, all three of us have very different experiences, but we do have in common is planning.
So there's lots of things. Where do I start? It's hard to pick it out piece by piece because it's just become second nature to me, as it would with you both. But you would have to think of who's going to take you there. You've got your companion card, great, but who's going to take you? Are your trusted support workers available? What happens if they call in sick? You might need to rely on a family member or forfeit the event entirely. Me personally, I need to park somewhere that's accessible, that's not too far away from the venue. So you've sort of got to scope out where the parking is, allow yourself extra time to get there. And there has been times where, I've just bought tickets with a companion card to a major event in Sydney at Kudos, and I rang up the accessible parking as directed on their website and through Ticketek, and they've said to me, "Oh, we can't reserve you a mobility park. It's first come in, best dress." I'm fortunate, I guess, in the sense that I'm mobile, so I can park in a standard spot. But what happens if I was someone that had a wheelchair and had a big ramp come out of their chair?
Let me tell you what happens there, Laura. You think to yourself, right, what is the earliest time I can get to that car park? And I reckon it might be the same for you as well. But for me, I would think, how much money am I about to pay for this parking? If I get there early enough, am I about to surrender literally 5 hours of my life just to make sure I get that car park? I've done that before.
Yeah, as you said,
go on,
you've
Laura.
got to give up, that extra 5 hours of your life, and going to a big event, I guess, can be quite exhausting with getting around, navigating crowds, and just, being tired, especially if it's a late night, and we might be dealing with just the pain or fatigue that can come with any of our disability. So to think of the fact that, I'm going to have to get there super early, it can already make a tiring experience even more exhausting.
And then I guess after that, for you, it might be bathrooms. I mean, it's number one for me. But I would want to make sure that I knew exactly where that bathroom was in case I needed to use it. Do I go beforehand? Do I go before and then possibly plan during? And then the crowds, will somebody be taking up that bathroom? Those are all things I've thought about.
Yeah, I know I have the feeling whenever I leave a show, I've got to know exactly where the lifts are, and, when a show finishes, I've got to sort of get up to get to that lift, before I sort of get smushed. Or if you've got a support person with you and that additional cost from your plan, you've sort of got to think, I've already had this person for 5 or 6 hours on a Saturday, which is quite a big chunk of change. I've got to get home now. So it can cause quite a bit of anxiety or frustration. And I don't know if you have it in the back of your mind, Jade or Susan, when you're out. You've got to plan before you get there. And then when you get there, you've got to sort of think about what's next. So when you're trying to to sit and enjoy the show, in the back of the mind, you'd be thinking, oh, how am I going to be getting out of here? It's going to be such a long drive home. So it sort of takes that, you're not able to focus 100% as if you were without a disability.
Yeah, so I guess my experience would be a little bit different to you guys, as my disability is sensory. So yeah, it starts off the same kind of process as Laura, of who's going to take me. First of all, generally I don't buy tickets unless I've got somebody to take me already. But then I had it happen where the friend that I was meant to go to Knotfest with earlier in the year pulled out a couple of weeks beforehand, and I ended up having to go with my dad, which was very sweet. He retired from going to music festivals back in 2014, but he came back purely so that I didn't miss out. And the good thing about going with my dad was that he's also a planner. He likes to plan. So it was really cool. So we were like, okay, parking, it doesn't matter if we get an accessible park, we just need to get there early enough to get a park. So that's what happened. And that's generally what happens. I try to get to events a little bit early also, because I need to try and avoid the hordes of people if I can, and get a good viewing spot at the same time, because a lot of these concerts that I go to are general admission. So I'm going to see Evanescence in Brisbane next week. That's all general admission. So I didn't actually use my companion card to buy those tickets, because I ended up buying VIP tickets so that I could get early access, so that I could stand closer to the stage. Like, that's how intense my planning is on all of this. And it's even at a point where I've said to my sister, who will be my companion for the night, I said to her, we need to get there early. Like, we can't just get there a couple of minutes before doors. We need to get there like half an hour, 45 minutes, even an hour early. I don't care. We just, you know what I mean? Because I need to try and avoid the hordes. And Susan, I saw you at Gajira last year, and we were both in the same boat. We were both in a similar place in line, and there were hordes of people everywhere. And thankfully, they had an elevator up to the second floor, and I know that I was able to stand up on the second floor and avoid the mosh pit and stuff on the bottom floor. So it's even familiarizing yourself with the venues that you're going to as well. Where's the elevator? Where's the bathroom? Is security going to be present? Are you going to be drinking alcohol that night? Because I know Laura's been to a few local shows with me, and she knows that at the local shows I do like to have a sneaky few drinks, a sneaky bev. So then it's also, am I going to be having a sneaky bev that night? Is the person that I'm with safe to do that with as well? And then it's, for example, I will go to a concert, like it was evident at Knotfest. It was evident when I saw The Offspring in Sydney last year. As it neared the end of the night, we were moving further and further back in the crowd, closer to the exit gate, so that we could avoid the hordes getting out. So generally, I try to be first in and first out where I can, especially because those environments are dark. So I'm essentially completely blind when it's dark. And that adds a whole nother layer when you're battling thousands of people to get out of a dark venue, or to get out of a, Centennial Park at 10 o'clock at night. And those lights, those big floodlights that they use, are almost useless for me anyway, especially on uneven ground where I can't see if there's ditches or mud or a step up or something like that. So, yeah, first in, first out. And then on top of that, if it's an event that I don't feel comfortable taking my guide dog to, who's going to look after my guide dog for the day or for those few hours? Because she has separation anxiety. I can't just leave her at home. I have to give her anxiety medication and then leave her with someone. Otherwise, she just sits by the front door watching all the cars drive past looking sad. So it's a whole big thing. And then on top of that, if I do want to be spontaneous, like say I want to go to the movies, that's something that I have to decide first thing in the day. It's not something that I can just decide to do, like half an hour before a movie starts, because if I'm going with a friend, but that friend doesn't drive, we have to try and organise transport. We have to book we have to get there early enough so that I can use my companion card for the movie ticket, because you can't.
Because you can't even just get a code to get it
you
online.
can't just use your companion card number to get a movie ticket online. Like there's actually and then it's on top of that, like, okay, well, do we go to an evening screening of a show and have, go and get the tickets early and then have dinner and then go back to the movie theater? Like, it's this whole big process of planning to go out and do just about anything.
Yeah, so you and I obviously went to that Gajira concert, as you said, Jade, and where you went upstairs, I went directly to the front. And so for me, I can't see anything if people are like in front of me even a little bit. So I just try and make sure that I am as close to the front as possible. And I guess very fortunate for the both of us, and maybe not that well known to people who don't really vibe with metal music, but the metal community is super accommodating for anybody.
Oh, they're amazing.
Who seem to have mobility issues, because there were people that were just like, get out of her way.
It's amazing. Like I've been to, festivals and stuff, and I've had my cane out, and metal fans, they're not looking and they step on my cane and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Did I damage it? Like, and I used to do wristbands for shows at my local uni bar, and while I was at uni, and I would do a wide variety of shows. And I found that the people going to the metal shows and the pop punk shows were so much nicer than the people going to like more mainstream music shows
100%.
And much more understanding. They'd see my cane and they'd be like, okay, my arm's right here. And like,
so what I'm hearing is that Laura's going to be coming with us to a lot of metal concerts coming up.
I'm missing out.
No, she rocked up to a local metal show in a Jessica Malboy shirt once. So,
so let me ask you, as all of us have our disabilities lifelong, at what point for you, okay, no, maybe it's just me, I used to think that I could be spontaneous, and I used to think that I would have no problem with just doing things on the fly in an unfamiliar environment. And maybe it was because I was young and very confident when before my age now. But like for me, the day where I realized I couldn't find a bathroom and I was in an unfamiliar environment and I really needed to pee and I didn't know where to go, that was when for me it all clicked and I was like, no, I can't go anywhere spontaneously anymore. Have you guys had a very similar situation, or have you always just been like solid planners?
For me, it's shopping centres. I know it's not necessarily events, but shopping centres. The first time I went to Miranda Fair, that was really, really stressful. I was with a support worker who also didn't know her way around Miranda Fair. And so we spent hours and hours just wandering around trying to look for these specific shops that aren't in Wollongong. And I was exhausted at the end of the day, and I was like, right, that's it. I am never going anywhere without planning again because I am exhausted. The lights in shopping centres are just awful. They're either too bright or they're too dim. I can't win. So I try to limit my time in shopping centres as much as I can. But yeah, I would say that that was probably the point where I was like, right, if I want to go and do something that isn't just, popping to get some bread and milk or going to get my nails done, I really need to go and I need to plan, especially if I'm going to places up in Sydney, because I find Sydney, as much as I love going to Sydney, because I love being able to go to places like Dangerfield and Utopia Records in the city and all that kind of stuff, it is incredibly overwhelming just because I'm not super familiar with the area and there's just people everywhere.
I guess there's not a specific point in time where I've had to become a planner and not being able to be spontaneous. I think I've always been quite organised. I've always been, from a young age, I've always had people looking out for me and doing that planning for me. But I think at the stage where it clicked and it said, oh, what now, where you've had to sort of start thinking about is that incident we spoke of earlier when I was applying for the companion card and I wasn't able to get up the stairs because the security guard was unwilling to help me. I think it became more of a problem with me when we get to that age, where, it sort of feels like we're othered, so to speak. So there's some venues where, I automatically feel really comfortable, like at the local venue, Diamond Dogs, which has also been great for Jade. I regularly go to bingo and, the host there knows to put me right up, on a lower table, somewhere with a bit more space. But there's been other venues or people that I've encountered where they don't have quite as good of an understanding of disability, because my disability can look invisible, so to speak, if I wasn't mobile and I was just sitting down. So those instances where I've received, looks or comments from people, that sort of turns me more into a planner, because, I've sort of got to think, what do I need to do, or how do I need to act to make this outing look as normal as possible, so I'm just seen as a young person going out, rather than look at that person with a disability.
Let's talk about why it's important people with disabilities should be able to be given the freedom to go out. I mean, I'll start because literally nobody ever sees us out. I think that probably leads to people having subconscious discrimination, as we've all kind of talked about in here and there, where people may not be, I guess, for lack of a better term, used to disability. But, people are still unfamiliar with disability. People still become upset looking at people with disabilities, and there's still a stigma around disabilities. And I'm saying all of these things, and I reckon you're both like, yeah. I mean, I've had people cry in front of me.
You're such an inspiration.
We're all inspirations here, ladies.
Or even I was shopping today, and I had my guide dog with me, and she sniffed a random lady, and she's gone, "No, I can't pat you. Can I pat her?" No, like it's like this whole. It's I think it's so important to be out and about for the community's benefit, because I think it is important that we are seen and we are heard, but also that we're seen as individuals, because I know that I've been out and I see content creators going out in groups with other people with disabilities. And so I think maybe there might be this stigma that, oh, well, we kind of flock together. It's like people with disabilities are only friends with people with disabilities. But that's not necessarily, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also not necessarily true either. Like, when Laura and I go out to drag bingo or something, we're going out with Laura's family or some of our mutual friends, that don't have a disability. But I also think that it's good for us as individuals, for our mental health as well, because I'm going to go into a bit of social work theory here, but Maslow's hierarchy of need, that social interaction is one of the most important basic human needs that everybody has, disability or not. So I think that being able to access the community, even if it's just going and doing the groceries and conversing with the cashier for a couple of minutes, is better than doing your online groceries and having them delivered to your front door. Because at least you're getting some kind of social interaction, regardless of whether you're doing that independently or with a support person. I don't know if that makes sense, but in my head, it makes sense.
I'm glad that you've brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, it's about time somebody has, but it's very accurate, right? Because even going out, for me, I do long distance wheeling, and there are times, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but a part of me is like, I might be the only person that person's ever seen that has a disability. And so I am glad I'm out here to literally represent the community to make sure that they see it.
Yeah, well, even I've just made a new friend, and they were like, "You're the first person." They're 31. They're the first. I am the first person that uses a guide dog that they have ever met or seen out in the community in their 31 years of life. And that blows my mind, because I spend a lot of time with my friends who have guide dogs. We get together and we have, the dogs play, and we have a couple of drinks and something to eat, and it's great fun. Like, there's so many guide dog users across the country that it just, plus all the dogs that are in training, it just boggles my mind that there are people out there in their 30s that have never seen a working guide dog out in the community.
Yeah, and I think going back to what Susan was saying, if people saw people out with disabilities living their life, it might get the clocks ticking in the back of their brain, especially with people that I'm working with that have a spinal cord injury, that have just acquired their disability. There's a lot of shame and stigma with that disability, because they think about who they used to be. So if a family member or them themselves saw someone out at a show or an event with a disability, it can sort of encourage them to go out and do the same things. Or this person's doing something, how about I give it a go? And then also I think if more people went out with a disability, it would make, it would build education, I guess, in terms of the venues to make it more accessible. So in the grand scheme of things, it might, improve policies or processes if there was to be a new event or a venue pop up.
I mean, at the end of the day, we need more campaigning for disability independence, I think.
Oh, 100%. And I think, I've been in situations where I've been asked where my carer is, and I'm like, I don't need a carer. I'm just out here ordering some sushi. I don't need a carer to do that. So yeah, I think that there is this inherent, this societal view that people with disabilities constantly need that care and support, and that there's no way they can be independent. Yeah.
I guess circling back to the companion card, although it can be difficult and it does have its hiccups, it's definitely worth persevering the application and using it where you can, because it's given me access to a lot more events and venues that I wouldn't have had the opportunities to.
Coming back to being out and about in society, but also an advocacy side of things, I'm going to plug some advocacy here. If you feel like someone is patronizing you or discriminating against you in any way, it is totally okay to say that's really uncalled for. Or don't you think that that was a little bit rude to say? Or, you know what, I'm really not comfortable with that question. It is 100% to say that. Never, ever, ever feel obliged to answer people's questions or accept people's help, especially because sometimes people do offer help. And I know that Susan and I have had conversations about this when we don't actually need the help, and actually their help would hinder us rather than help us. So, don't if you need the help, don't be afraid to accept the help. But if you don't need the help, it's not necessarily rude to say thank you, but I'm okay.
This episode of Have the Nerve was written, edited and produced by me, Susan Wood. If you want any information on our NDIS support coordination or policy and advocacy services, visit scia.org.au. And while you're there, go and check out our resource hub. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. And even if you're not, tell at least one person about this podcast. I mean, is it consistently on schedule? No, not really. But do you feel like you have new information? I hope so. And surely that's worth sharing, right? Right? Thanks for listening.